everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex. This is Big Baby Reviews. Check out my comics, Big Baby and Star Crasher at KingComics.CA. Check out my other videos. King Comics 2021 is the YouTube channel. Check out my Instagram as well, MaximusRex13, and check me out on Facebook, MaxRex and or Big Babies. Today, guys, we are looking at Spawn number 12. It's McFarlane Friday. This is cover dated July 1993, and first of all, let's talk about the cover. Very simple. Eye-catching design, just basically symbols, right? The skull and Spawn's kind of logo here with the time clock indication and all that. Spawn's kind of been shot in the head here, and the skull, is meant to represent his killer, right? That's what the storyline is going to be about, issues 12 and 13. Not going to spoil who that is before we get to the end of this issue when we actually find out, but if you've read this issue, you know who it is and who the skull is meant to represent. If you don't, like I said, you'll find out by the end of the issue. And from the art side of things, I do want to mention, I think this cover's genius just because this probably took about half an hour, possibly even inked completely, and then sent off to the colorist, and that's a really, really, really quick bit of time to do your cover for your comic, so you can move on to either the next issue or the pages inside. Don't know in what order he would do that. I personally, I don't know if I've ever mentioned it, but I like to save the cover for last because I figure it's probably my best piece. Because as you improve as an artist, your last piece is probably your best piece most times, I think. At least that's kind of how it feels like for me, generally. So you would want the first thing that people see to be your most recent and best work, right? That's kind of my mindset. Don't know if McFarlane does it that way. But basically, keep it long story short, what I'm trying to say is it's a great deadline cover. Eye-catching, does its job, but also allows you the time to move on and hit your deadlines and get those pages started. So we're going to do that as well. Have a look inside. This is Flashback, story and art Tom McFarlane, letters and editor Tom Orzechowski, colors Steve Oliff and Ruben Rudin, Ollie Optics. Starting off with the colors, Spawn was always the best colored Image comic, pretty sure, like at least till I wouldn't even know what to compare it with now, but back then I would say it was definitely the best colored one. Sometimes the colors would try stuff that works, some that doesn't. I feel like a lot of the work being done here in the clouds is definitely the colors and not Tom McFarlane. He probably did, the panel work, the moon, the church, the Spawn origami cape, right? And even the sky, I tend to think this is the same star that's being repeated, right? And these little dots as well are like they're really constant, I would say. They're exactly the same, but in that context, for small little patterns, it really doesn't matter. Your eye just catches it overall, unless you really pay attention. You won't notice that. And the clouds here really add to it, and I think work pretty well for early 90s kind of computer digital coloring. And there's something about it I just kind of really like. It is something to do with the effect or maybe the actual colors picked, but you can really see kind of the halftone kind of printing process when you look really up close, more so here than you can in the other elements like the moon and Spawn. Great eye-catching first page, I think. Only problem is all this text, right, that we do not want to read. And what you'll notice with this issue and the next is that McFarlane is way wordier than all four of the writers that he had recently write the series, so it's kind of jarring when you get back to his kind of narration and dialogue and stuff, and just the page is filled with text. Great double page splash here. I appreciate the fact that color-wise they're not in this shot using the kind of blue. There's a bit of blue hue to it, but I mean they're downplaying the blue to make Spawn more of a grayish kind of hue in the highlights in his costume. But there will be bits again where he's kind of bluer, and it just I've mentioned this before, I feel like it makes him feel more like a superhero and less like a kind of creature of the night horror character, which he's kind of really supposed to be. Down here, just great backgrounds. He's certainly not cheaping on this double page spread that you have to turn, right? The Rob Liefeld thing. Just a little bat up here I think is kind of funny, but really cool. Just adds like a foreground element on top of Spawn to create, again, more of those layers. But definitely not cheaping on the background here and these other bats and stuff, and just layering the image. I think it looks pretty good. All this stuff is what impresses me most here. But yeah, McFarlane's just very wordy as opposed to the, award-winning writer, another great example here, right? That he just had on. So there's that jarring thing to get back to this and be like, oh, it's kind of a slog to read through. And to be honest, as a kid, I would, I kind of remember the storyline overall. I have not read all of this in more recent modern times, because yeah, I just can't. Again, McFarlane here is a good example. This double, is it a double? No, it's more of like a splash and another splash, but almost kind of feels like a double page splash. If you'd only maybe connected Spawn back here with this big Spawn head, doesn't matter, right? Just to have the cape continue here. Not much more work, and it would give us that sense of a double page splash. But anyways, these two profile shots, really cool design-wise, right? Good old McFarlane profiles. He's using the cape and the shadows to his advantage in both shots, right? The shape of the eye changes drastically. You know, it's McFarlane. Nothing's ever super consistent. For a while there, he was really drawing the lip through the mask here, which he's doing, which I loved as well, and which Capullo kept doing, and I enjoyed. So the mask is so tight that it sticks to his face. And there's also, this is kind of the period where we start wondering about Spawn's nose. Like, is it protruding? Is it not? Like, what happens? And that'll play into later when there's a change to Spawn's look, and the new face is how they advertised it. And it was kind of a letdown because it was much like the old face. Anyways, when we get to that, I'll talk more about it. That's later on with some Greg Capullo issues. But yeah, still, like I said, layout-wise, design-wise, very smart doing this. And what he's getting across here is, I guess, the title of the story, flashback, and you're seeing when he was still alive and marrying Wanda. And what he's also done is, I would almost call it like reverting back. The McFarlane that we see here is kind of the McFarlane that we had in like early Amazing Spider-Man, issues 301, 302, and around there, where McFarlane was mostly just doing outlines. He was still doing his Noodly style, but he hadn't really mastered shadows yet, I feel like. And now in Spawn, he definitely has, and he's definitely using shadows to his advantage, art-wise, design-wise, deadline-wise. And so I feel like he's reverted back to an older style here to, at least storyline-wise, create that sense of a flashback and of a different look. And I think it totally works. I have no problem with him doing that. But what that also means is he's got a lot less to draw than he would in like these modern pages, you know, in the Spawn story. So I think it's a clever way to, again, get through two pages pretty quick. Good old vertical establishing shot, right? Not much to draw. Just draw a bunch of parts of buildings and we know where we are. Again, I was saying he uses shadow much more to his advantage now, deadline-wise and design-wise. Here's another good example, right? This is a pretty quick panel to draw. Shadows on the face here, right? Early McFarlane, even on Amazing Spider-Man, wasn't doing this yet. He was mostly just doing contour lines, right? So you see those differences. He's trying some kind of other hatchy, designy stuff. I feel like maybe, you know, the hatching should have maybe gone into a black here instead of this open, you know, the colors through in a gray, I guess. Not that it's horrible, but maybe a shadow would have been even, you know, more diabolical for this panel to be a bit framed with some more black. And again, just the wordiness is what oh my God, the amount of text you got to read here. Like, and you know, you read the dialogue and there's definitely room for editing and cutting down, you know what I mean? Like, why would you want to fill up all this beautiful art with these things? Like, there's ways to make, you know, Spawn, you know, goes to meet, basically Wanda's grandmother, who's blind now, right? So she can't see him and see how horrible he looks, but she recognizes that it's Al, and she sees him as an angel who's coming back to talk to her, right? Whether or not, you know, that's true. We know he's from hell in the story, but there's just ways, I think, in the storytelling visually to make this moment much more poignant, I guess is how I put it, or memorable, and for it to have impact, and with way less dialogue, you know? There's just getting so much across in the words that you could be getting across in the art, the actual art. And that's kind of what I feel comics should be doing. It's kind of my philosophy. As much as I can get done in the visuals to explain things, the less you have to kind of do like in the movies, right? When characters come in and extrapolate on the plot and what's going on. But there's a word for that. Exposition. There it goes. My brain finally kicked in. So when there's too much exposition, right? And with Tom McFarlane, there's just a ton of that comes through in the dialogue, that really he's a visual artist. He should be getting across in the visuals. Love this establishing shot. I think that's smart as well. You know, with the insert panels here on top of it, overlaid once again to create that sense of depth. Add the layering. This whole image goes to a bleed. And again, McFarlane's always been a master at these city scenes. There's you know, whatever you say about his figure work, if you like it, don't like it, I enjoy it, and it's fun, and it's quirky, and sometimes cartoony, and he stretches stuff out. But his cityscapes are just always very evocative, I find. Just, you know, he's got New York down, and he's inventing buildings here. He's not using photo reference. More shadow work, right? Like we talked about. To good effect, I think, on Sam's face here. Twitch, not so sure. I feel like this down here, you should have maybe just continued, like make the tie be the white kind of negative space element, and then just fill this in. There's almost like a Sam Keith kind of quality here. Again, probably feels like this page for sure, with the lack of backgrounds, this was, you know, in a couple of hours he was done this page. He's really blown through it here. So yeah, it's almost like he's taken over the writing again, and you know, he's finding deadline solutions to his drawing problems, but then having to compensate with more dialogue to explain what's going on. That's kind of the vibe I get here. This is a very personal moment, I think. You know, a lot of the dialogue, the badly spelled words to you know, purposefully be read as the child would say it. All this stuff comes from his personal experience with his kid, which is cute and all, but I don't know if just, you know, again, storytelling wise and dialogue wise, if this all works. It feels like he spends a lot of time on it, and it's not necessarily what we're coming to Spawn for. I get that it's definitely something that's on his mind, and cartoonists, you know, tend to write about what they know, and their life seeps into the storyline. I get it, and that's what he was experiencing at that moment. So it makes sense for him to do that, but, you know, it's not the aspect I'm that interested in Spawn, to be honest. No offense to anyone out there who's into that stuff. We've got our insert poster by Rob Liefeld. Really like this one. Once again, it's Rob Liefeld, so we're going to have to turn the comic here for this double page spread. Hopefully you can see most of it. Let me see what I got in the camera there. It's probably close enough. So Blood Wolf, which, you know, I didn't know was back in the day, but it's basically a Lobo ripoff, right? I figured it out eventually. And this is kind of the phase where Rob Liefeld discovered, I feel like, Jay Lee, and then through Jay Lee kind of discovered Simon Bisley, or, you know, doesn't even really know that much about Bisley, but like kind of sees the ticks that Jay Lee's taken from Bisley and using them himself. So, I mean, the inking is fairly clean on the Blood Wolf figure itself, which is, you know, it's Liefeld inking himself, so I'm happy to see that. There's a slightly rougher line here and there on certain elements, but it's when we get down here to his boots and what's kind of going into the background. He's come back with some white medium on top there. Not exactly sure what he's trying to evoke. Maybe some sort of explosion, but there's some spatter and stuff. So yeah, I definitely feel like Liefeld's getting this from either from Bisley directly, possibly, but definitely I think more likely is that he looked at Jay Lee, right? He's in contact with, he tends to take from artists that he's in contact with in his visual aesthetic and style. So he's in contact with Jay Lee. The Youngblood Strike file, I think, is probably coming in around this time, right? I think that was kind of connected, or just has served as a prologue to this story with Spawn, if I'm remembering that correctly. And yeah, so he's definitely working in some of that Jay Lee influence, which is cool. I'm okay with it, and that's a great image. Next issue, Spawn by Walter Simonson. We'll see if that delivers or not. So here we've got a scene where you've got some, you know, I guess Terry here assumes they're from work from one of the agencies, the government agencies that he works for, want to talk to him, but then he realizes that's not exactly it. And it's revealed on this page here that basically what that is our villain, forget his name, Jason something, Jason Wynn, I think that's what it is. He's basically responsible for Spawn's death, right? And also hiring the killer to kill Spawn, who we're going to find out at the end of this issue who that is. And once again, another cleverly designed McFarlane panels, use of silhouettes here. Wouldn't necessarily call it Sin City style, but, you know, maybe the inspiration comes from there. Also, the inspiration comes from getting through a page really quick. But again, I think it works storytelling-wise, so good for him. This down here, so we've got them all Spawn in the alleyway with his buddies getting drunk, his alleyway buddies, and they're singing the Flintstones song. And then down here, Flintstones theme song, copyright Hanna-Barbera Productions. So I wonder, I think now that I'm older and wiser, this might be a reference to Bedrock, right? Rob Liefeld's character, and somehow they were afraid of some litigation with Hanna-Barbera because Bedrock was the name of the town in the Flintstones, and that's why Rob Liefeld eventually changed the name to Badrock, which is just horrible. Kind of like Overkill became Overkill. Oh man, when you find out that these names change because of like legal reasons, oh, it's just so deflating. Anyways, so yeah, so you got the Spawn guys, and here we're talking about farts and drinking. So you know, we got some toilet humor going on. And then all of a sudden we got a character coming back, putting Spawn's mask on. Right? Love this goofy shot here. Funny, fun stuff, funny stuff. But then, you know, Spawn's like, hey, what are you doing? No, you shouldn't do that. And the mask kind of sucks down on his face, I guess is how I describe it. And kind of, you know, like if you put a plastic bag over someone's head and sucked all the air out is kind of what's happening here. So I guess he can't breathe. So Spawn shows up and pulls off the mask and saves him. Here's another, like, the art is fine here. I think Spawn looks great. The figure, all that. McFarlane's definitely learning to exaggerate certain things, and again, certain elements that will become part of the new costume, new look later are already kind of established. That new look still flowed basically from the old look. It was like he was improving it slowly but surely, and then eventually just kind of added a few, you know, different elements in that one issue, but the look had been changing from the beginning, right? But yeah, these are instances too where I don't think the coloring helps Spawn, where there's a lot of blue, and again, you know, that Batman thing where it starts to make him more superhero-y than horror. I don't know if superhero-y is a word, but I just said it. We got the McFarlane hand here, right? The twisted, you know, I think I've talked about this before, where I was like, why does he twist the hands that way when he draws them, right? And then, you know, the first few times I saw interviews with Tom McFarlane where he's talking and his hand kind of like, he does do these, when he's talking, but he does, you know, the hand movements and the crooked hands, you know. So again, that's my McFarlane working on it. And then I understood where he was getting those hands from. It's him, right? They always say cartoonists, artists put a lot of themselves in their art, and I definitely think that rings true for most artists. Yeah. So Spawn, a little drunk, kind of walks off away from these guys, needs some air, I guess, whatever. We get a designy page. It's also a deadline page that gets some of Spawn's kind of inner monologue here, because he gets kind of another flashback sequence here. You know, to give it that scattered kind of psychedelic effect, right? McFarlane does one of his crazy, cool looking design pages, which is great, but once again, probably drawn pretty quickly. Again, deadline page you can get through real fast. And, you know, we get the skulls slowly appearing, the rhythm of it, obviously to establish that, boom, the reveal that Chapel is Al Simmons' killer. And that's a pretty killer shot at Chapel. I gotta say, McFarlane really pulls it off here. There's something odd with next issue that I'll just mention, not to spoil too much, but like this is Chapel before Spawn will make some sort of permanent change to his face, and I just want to point out that the way he looks here is the permanent look to his face next issue, so I'm not quite sure what the change is. Again, this is like post Jay Lee doing Chapel, right? So McFarlane definitely saw that, and it's definitely pulling in a lot more Jay Lee in his interpretation of Chapel than he was Rob Liefeld's, right? Rob Liefeld's, you know, at least early Chapel design from early Youngblood, to me was basically very similar to Cable to a certain extent. And then when Jay Lee came in, he made the teeth, right? Not just makeup, even though in the storyline it is. Anyways, visually, he gave him the insanely huge guns with the extra apparatus and the knives with all the different points and things. So definitely McFarlane pulling from the Jay Lee aesthetic on this. And it looks great, even giving us like a Slate Max kind of glove here. And I like the idea that, you know, I think he silhouetted the hand because he didn't want to draw it too much, or just to make it stand out, just like the head kind of contrast, and then just decided on the way down that, oh, maybe that's just his hand is so bloody that it's just kind of running down his arm. You know, definitely a drawing created for maximum effect, I would say. And even the ways, the typical Spawns, you know, the head in the background, I guess, or in this case, in the foreground, in front of Chapel and the reveal and stuff. That's just a great piece. And as a kid, you know, we'd heard about this for like a whole year, just about was the buildup. And when you're a kid, obviously 1 year is a lot longer than it is when you're in your 30s, 40s, and 50s. So, you know, I waited a long time for this as a kid, and this whole page here was worth it, I think. And then next issue, well, you know, we'll talk about if that's worth it when we get to it next week. Anything to note back here? Nothing in particular. A lot more kind of fan art that looks just like copied image art. So yeah, saying how that style of drawing became so popular. It's a great Jim Lee drawing with some odd coloring. That was, I think, still the Wizard cover colorist. I forget his name. Was it McNabb or something? Those early issues of Wizard up until about 1718 or something. Somewhere around there were colored by this guy. And he had kind of different kind of color sense and used airbrush, I feel. And I think it was still physical coloring, not digital. And I gotta say, I think it looks pretty good on a lot of these early image artists and on those Wizard covers. If you ever have a look at those, at least the first, like I said, 16, 17. I know that my favorite issue of Wizard 16 was colored by him. I could see it up here. I've got it up in my studio with the Pit and the Max, Deathblow, Bloodwolf, and colors look great on the image stuff. So not sure exactly what happened to that guy, but kudos for the colors. There you go, guys. That's my review today of Spawn number 12 by Tom McFarlane. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, let me know down in the comments below. If you're subscribed and you're still watching, thank you so much. Appreciate the loyalty. And if you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you. Really helps the channel out, helps us grow, and helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. So everyone out there, thanks for watching and have an awesome day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.